Hi. Today I am making, using this impressive tome, the X-Kilt by Alan Herbert. This is a free pattern, it's available online. Because it's available online and somebody else has put all the hard work into this, I'm going to give you a link to where you can find this yourself. One down in the description box as well. Hopefully YouTube links are working by now for me. And go and have a look. I'm not going to go into this into huge detail. This isn't my work. I'm just sharing it with you. Don't be too put off by this. The reason there's quite a lot. One is I've opted to print it off. I work better when I've got bits of paper printed in front of me instead of it being on a phone. That's just me. I'm that age. The reason there's so much is because it's aimed at somebody who's never sewn before. So it covers absolutely everything. And a lot of that information I simply don't need. I already know that. I already know how to deal with it. The bit I needed was the pleat layout pattern. So where to put the pleats in and the proportions, that sort of thing. And also I just needed to understand the maths behind it and what measurements I needed to take. Once I'd done that, this is all I need. One piece of paper with the layout diagram on it. And that combined with my measurements and the examples in the pattern is all the information that I need. I shall lay this out to show you how ridiculous this is in a minute, but this is the paper pattern. It's 1-to-1, and the reason I did a paper pattern is it helps me understand quickly and easily where my folds are supposed to go, what the proportions are, all that good stuff. Trying to do this just in my head, not something I'm very good at. I have already done one of these kilts, and I made this about a year ago. I'll put it on in a minute so you can actually see it and see how it looks. The trouble is, I've been trying to look after my health. Don't worry, it's not a sponsor segment. That really sounded like a sponsor segment. I've been trying to look after my health and, you know, work around the ME, that kind of thing. So I've lost quite a bit of weight since I made that, and it's too big for me now. And it's not the easiest thing to adjust. You have to be completely certain of your measurements and completely honest with yourself when you make one of these, because once you've made it, it's not very easy to adjust it to a different size. I'm going to give the prototype kilt that I've done to a friend of mine who wants to try kilts out. Seems like a good use of it because it's not really any use to me now. I'm going to make a new one. I have made the fatal YouTube decision of using black fabric, and we will be using black thread. So I shall do my best to explain to you what we're doing. Okay, let's just quickly get changed so you can see this kilt and I can lay out the fabric for you and you'll have a better idea of what we're making today. We're in vertical mode for this bit, so yeah, the footage might look a little bit strange, but that's what we're going with. This is the prototype. I really like it. I like the proportions. I like how it moves. So this is kind of what we're aiming for, but a better fit. And the problem is the front of this actually wraps around. So the issue I've got is it should wrap around and meet up about here, but because of how much weight I've lost, it actually wraps around to about here on me. And the belt loops and everything else means that that looks a bit weird and it doesn't fit very well. I'm actually beyond the Velcro on the waist, so it's my belt holding it shut right now, which is a bit of a shame because I do like how this looks. It's got some purple top stitching on it, and it's great. It's very, very comfortable. You know, you can just move your legs around and stuff. It's great. There's when it comes to fit, when you've got trousers, they can be a bit of a pain to fit around the hips. Not an issue here. This is fine. I'm going to be very brave. I'm going to show you the paper pattern without getting changed. So this should give you some idea of how much fabric that you need. I'm about 5'10". Right, so that is the pattern folded in half, and it's like two of me. So you're going to need between 10 and 12 feet of fabric, which is 3 yards, 3 meters, something like that. Yeah, you need a lot of fabric. And then there is a lot of folding and pleating to go. So I'm just going to lay this out on the floor for you, and I'll show you how this all squashes down from this into this. The only space in the house that I've got that is big enough is the living room floor, and that's only after I've cleared things out the way. So you will need a lot of space for one of these. I suppose you could do it a little bit at a time on a table, but ideally you want to be able to lay the whole thing out in one go. My pattern is made up of lots of pieces of printer paper because that's what I had. I would have preferred just a roll of paper, so you can use things like lining paper for wallpapering to do this, or you can buy rolls of actual pattern paper. And yeah, let's put our folds back in where they need to be so that you can get an idea of how much this squashes down. Now, the construction is all box pleats. And once you've done your maths to figure out where they go, that informs you what your proportions are going to be, because depending on the size of your body and your proportions, there are different proportions for the pleats, the front apron, and the length to make sure you get the look you want, because not everybody looks their best in the same proportions on this, and that is actually covered in the pattern, so there is provision for that in the pattern, which is good. Where is that one? That one goes there, that one goes there, and then that one goes there. So afterwards you end up with a much shorter pattern, and it ends up with a bit of a curve to it so that that shapes to your body. Yeah, let me just give you a closer look here. The one I'm making has 9 pleats, and I think I'm either 11 or 12 inch on the front apron. That's the bit that, you know, goes over the top of everything. And I've made sure when I mark that I've got my fell line. I'll show you the measurements now, that's done in a minute, what the part is. A little note up here to tell me that I need to make a belt, which is another rectangle. This tells me it's the waist at the top. And for the hem, although this does seem like the right length, I might need to adjust that length when I actually put it together. I'm not sure yet because of the fabric I'm using. Every pleat, I've got where the outer face is, and that helps me work out where my folds go. We keep going, and then we've got the under apron here, again with this line here just tells me where the edges of the under apron are, and then there's just more instructions everywhere. Instructions are really, really important when you're doing a pattern like this. I did some measuring on the paper pattern there, and when it's all folded up to the size that you want it to be, about 52 inches, which is, I can't do the maths in my head, 52 inches, about 132 centimetres. And then when you roll it all out, I nearly ran out of tape. It was 119 inches, which, well, that's just off the end of my metric side on my tape. So what are we looking at there? About 302 centimetres. That's massive. But what I want to do now is I want to show you how you actually measure for one of these, because that's the most important part of all of this. You've got to get your measurements accurate. And your first one is your waist measurement. It has dropped a little bit on me, but your waist measurement is just as it sounds. You want to go round basically where your belly button is. That's usually where your waist is. That's like your narrowest point above the hip. Now, if you're used to modern clothes, you will feel like this is quite high, but that is what your waist measurement is. These are supposed to sit up there. Your next measurement, I've just realised something that's going to be a problem here. You need to see my legs, and you can't see my legs. So let me just quickly get changed out of this kilt. I'll put some trousers on, and then you can actually see how we're supposed to do this measurement. Okay, got some trousers on, some nice pink trousers so you can see a bit more clearly what I'm doing. Now these are a hip sort of height trouser, which is more what you expect from modern clothes. So that gives you a good idea of where you might measure your waist incorrectly. You actually need to be coming up to your actual waist, and that, on me at least, is up here. Now, depending on your own body's proportions, you might find that your waist looks further up or further down in relation to your hips. For me, this is where it is. So once you've got that measurement, write that down, that's important. Your next measurement is also very important because this is the only part from here to here that you need to worry about the fit. And in the pattern he has this as the rump measurement, which I suppose is fair, but it's what I know as the hip measurement. So you are going around the widest part of your body. So where because your hip bones are like around about here, and then just a bit below that, you've got your seat, so where your bum sticks out the furthest. And at the front, it's usually where you're kind of the flattest, so it's below your tummy. And this measurement you will need, it's very important, and be honest with this measurement. You want to make sure that when the tape measure goes round, it's not pulled completely tight. You want, while you stood up, for it to be comfortable, and ideally so you can get a thumb or a finger between your body and the tape. Do that at the front if you're measuring yourself, it's easier. If you make this too tight, it's going to feel restrictive when you wear it. And by all means, let it out a little bit if you want a slightly less tailored fit, if you want it to be a little bit looser. But I would advise that when you take this measurement, if you've got about a digit's thickness between your body and the tape, it's going to be about right. It's going to look right and it's going to feel nice. You don't need to worry about, like when you sit down, your measurements getting bigger or anything like that, because the kilt will move. So you've got that measurement now, your waist and the hip. Once you've got this one, well, this seat, once you've got this one, your next important measurement is from the hip to wherever you took that second measurement for your bum. And this is also incredibly important. Whatever that measurement ends up being, you need that one to be accurate. All you need to do here is just hold it where those two lines are, and that gives you that. With those three measurements, you can actually work out how the top of the kilt fits. That's really the only fitted part. And it is important to be honest. Numbers are just numbers. So if you are uncomfortable with knowing what your numbers are, this might not be the project for you. But just remember, the only person who needs to know these numbers are you, and the better your clothes fit, the better you will look and the better you will feel. So what the actual number is doesn't matter. Just write it down and forget it. It's just maths. Your next measurement that you need is from the waist to whatever length you want it to be. Now, I prefer these to be slightly above the knee. You might prefer it to be slightly lower than that or shorter than that. Word of warning, the shorter you go, the harder it is to maintain your modesty. So just bear that in mind with whatever your end goal is with your own personal kilt. I don't mind the length that I've got. You do learn how to sit and how to move around in one of these so that you're not flashing everybody. Yeah, they're modest, but they're not trouser modest. Once you've got those three measurements, you can then go through the X-Kilt pattern. I'm not going to take you through that process. It broke my head when I was trying to figure it out myself. If you're better with numbers, you'll have an easier time. There is a lot of information online about this particular kilt that will talk you through it. It's really not too bad. So that's the difficult part. I know this is a very long sort of intro tutorial kind of thing into this video on how to make one of these, but your preparation on these kilts is what makes all the difference when it comes to wearing it. Because although your pattern pieces are very simple rectangles, it's all in the folding and the measuring that makes the difference. I'm going to transfer my paper pattern to my fabric now and really hope that that goes smoothly, because I'm using a really nice black broadcloth wool, and it's not the easiest fabric in the world to mark because it repels just about everything, and it's not the easiest fabric in the world to press either. If you are using a wool, or really any natural fibre, to make one of these, be sure to pre-wash your fabric first before you mark or cut anything out. Otherwise, if your fabric shrinks, all of this work you've done to this point will be for naught, and you will be having to find a smaller friend to give your first kilt to because it won't fit you. Can you tell I've been there before? Right, let's crack on with this next bit. With the help of my original kilt, since I like the length of that, I've adjusted the length on my pattern just by folding the bottom up. And yeah, we're just getting into the trickier part now, which is I've got to mark in all of the lines, the vertical lines, so that I can understand where to fold this. I'm using a chalk, so I've given myself just a little bit extra hem. One nice thing with broadcloth is it doesn't fray. You don't actually need to hem it because it's like a felted wool. So I can just cut it and leave it raw, which is what I intend to do. But I want to give myself just a bit extra, just in case I need the extra length when I put this together. This is a slightly thicker fabric than I was using before, so it might need it. When you're doing very long straight lines like this, if you don't have a rule, and I don't for this size, you can use wooden battens. Do be a bit careful, they can be warped. This one I'm using is quite straight, which is good. And it just makes it easier. Strongly recommend putting all of your markings in. To figure out where my vertical lines are going to go, there's two ways. You can either measure each one individually like I did for making the paper pattern, or the way I'm doing it to speed things up for me is I'll use a pin at each end of the line marked on the pattern, roll the pattern back, and then chalk it in with my baton and my little blue chalk there. And I work all the way along this big long rectangle until I've got everything done. This is going to take some time. Okay, we're all marked up. The horizontal line here, that's the fell, or the seat hip measurement, that's where that is, and then that's the waist at the top there. You can see a bit more clearly here where you've got the panels for the pleats. So one of these big ones goes at the back of the box pleat, and then these thin ones are on the front. And as I fold it all up, that's what makes it shrink and give it volume and shape. I haven't marked the horizontal line on the apron down there because we don't need it. And I haven't marked it on the apron up here because we don't need it. This line is a guide for our stitching, which we're going to do next. A quick word on the apron here. So this is the bit that goes over the front when everything's done. And depending on your body shape and proportions and personal preference, you will make some changes on this. This is suggested in the pattern. This is an A-frame one, which suits my body shape better, suits what I'm making here better, and I would say for most slim people, that is the shape that you want. If you aren't slim, then I would recommend probably going for a squarer panel, either completely square or with slightly less taper than this. Probably more flattering, but don't, whatever you do, do it that way, because that's going to look weird. It's going to make all your pleats hang weird. It's not going to be fantastically flattering. Do go through the do go through the X-Kilt pattern because there's more instructions and more details than I'm going to go into here, and it does explain a bit better about what choices that you're making with that. I have quite a lot of this fabric left, which is nice. I bought this for another project and it wasn't suitable for that project, so I have loads. We're now doing the pleats, and this is one of the most important parts because this is what gives you the look that you're after on this. And there's a couple of things that you need to be aware of when you do them. I did, when I did the first one, follow the instructions just exactly, because I'd not made one before. And I very quickly learned there is a reason why you do these the way you do. So these vertical lines that you've got are going to be your box pleats. And when you've actually folded one, you end up with that. So you've got the skinny part on the outside and the big part on the inside. And this is where your fell line comes in, your rump or seat or hip. You need to leave a little gap, and whatever gap you leave there has to be consistent for every single pleat you put in. But as long as you leave that gap there, you're okay. So I always get the larger gap, which you can see between these two chalk lines here, find the halfway point and put a different coloured pin in, top and bottom, because this line needs to fold to the middle to give you this box pleat here. But you need to leave that gap there, fold both sides of the pleat, and then at the top you need to meet them up. Now on the pattern it does say if you've got a large difference between this measurement and this measurement, you might have to overlap that one. I don't have to, I haven't got that big a difference there on me. But the reason for this is it gives you the taper at the top that you need to fit your body. So once you've got it pinned at the top and pinned in the middle, you will find that the crease will go in sort of like a V, like a very long V from the waist. And as long as this is even, both sides, you're okay. This is the most time-consuming part of the whole project, and you will use a lot of pins. I also find it's important to keep the bottom pinned as you sew because it keeps the fabric under control a lot better. If you don't pin this bit, all of the fabric at the bottom tries to go to its full size, which obviously you don't want when you're trying to fight it with a sewing machine. This fabric is behaving beautifully. I do like working with wool, it's very forgiving, and I'm hoping this sews as nicely as it's handling. Do be careful though as you're handling it, because this chalk, if you're using something like a wool, will rub off as soon as you look at it, which is great for later when we clean up, but it's a bit frustrating when you're working with it. Okay, it is some time later, and I have all the pins in that I need. This fabric is a little bit more mobile than the prototype fabric I used because it's wool, so it's a bit springy. But you can sort of see how it goes from being a rectangle to having a bit of a curve. If I hadn't got this hem here pinned, it'd be a lot more pronounced, because we've shrunk the top here a lot further than here, and we haven't shrunk here at all. Next job is to sew, but not everything. So this line we put in for the middle, that's as far as we're sewing down. So you sew down from the top here, and then you go back up to the top. And I have to do that for every single one. And that's what gives this top the strength and the shape and keeps it all together. The aprons, similarly, I've got to do it on this side, but this side is just a turned hem. And I am going to put a turned hem on there rather than just cutting it raw, because it will just give it a little bit more structure. Same thing on this side actually. So we'll have to do down to this point here, but then this bit will be left unsewn. So this will all be open to move around. And then on this side, again, you've just got a hem to finish off. Not too difficult to do that, happily. Here's my very tall friend. It's a bit ridiculous, but this is the only way I can get me and the kilt in frame to show you what's going on. So we'll just go with it. I know it's a little bit tricky to see what's going on here because we've got black thread on black wool and black buttons, which in person looks perfectly fine. On camera, it's a little bit hard to see what I'm doing. However, I do have all of the pleats now sewn. This is the front apron, which is actually pinned shut because of the buttons, but the front apron is done, the inside apron is done, and all of the pleats all the way around are done. So you've got a nice sort of thing going on here. Everything's pressed. The only thing I haven't done is I haven't trimmed off the loose threads. I'll do that once I do the next stage. I did run across a couple of problems, but not with the pattern. The problems I came across were sewing things. First one, this mannequin doesn't quite go small enough for me now. So the reason there's a bit of a gap on this side is because, well, my waist is just a little bit smaller than this mannequin goes. Not a huge problem because I tend to use it for tops rather than bottoms when it comes to making clothes and patterns and that sort of thing. But it does mean that showing you what's going on, the fit doesn't look quite right on here. The other one is the under apron was actually a little bit long on the pattern. So I went back and had a read, and it does say that it is a little bit long and you can trim it afterwards. So that's what I did. And to measure for that, you go from this point here all the way around the back and back to that point and take that measurement, and that will be your waist. You don't want to take the measurement of the front apron included with that. If you find that that measurement is too long, take a little bit off the inside, the under apron, and that will adjust all of that for you, because your front apron here wants to meet up with your pleats where they begin and end. That's part of the design. So let's give you a slightly better look at what's going on, and you can see this is how the pleats turn out when they're pressed, and you just stop at the bottom. Now on my prototype I did a horizontal line here, and I've opted not to do that here. I don't think it's going to be necessary because this wool does have a little bit of give, so if I need a little bit extra, there's some there and it's not going to pull on the fabric in theory. So yeah, you work all your way around and everything's a bit bunched because of the mannequin situation. And you just make sure you press everything quite heavily. These are quite big pleats compared to a traditional kilt. That is by design. And this wool is, well, it doesn't like being pressed very much. It's very bouncy, but that's kind of a wool thing. On the front, there's not much sewing to go now. I've got the waistband, what will be the waistband, around the neck there, and some of that's going to become the belt loops as well, which I'm thinking, I don't know, I may or may not put those on. So we'll do that bit next. I also picked out some buttons. So I have these fairly flat, plain black ones. These will go on the waistband because if I'm wearing a belt, these will get covered up. So I don't need them to be fancy. And then, because of how I've turned this edge of the apron and done a top stitch line, I want to make a feature of that. There's a couple of different ways you can do the apron. I did think about hand sewing that, but I opted for this one because it felt like the right choice. So to close the apron on the front, I've got these textured black buttons. These are some salvage buttons off a coat or similar. I've inherited a lot of buttons over the years, so it's nice to be able to use them up. But I'm going to just space them down that one side. I did try them in 2 pairs. I didn't really like it, but I think that is interesting. Adds a bit of interest to the front of the kilt and uses up some of my button stash. This is where this trusty old machine comes into its own. I would not trust a modern machine to deal with this amount of wool. It's quite a lot. It's going to be a lot for this machine as well. I've already destroyed quite a few pins pinning this together, as happens. I've got the 2 halves of the waistband sewn. They're just long rectangles to the relevant length. So we've got those 2 halves sewn together. I've sewn the ends and clipped the corners, ready for turning out, but I can't do anything with that until I've sewn it to the body of the kilt. And we'll just see how we go with this one. Normally, my machine is okay with this sort of thing, but I am asking a lot of it, so here we go. Good luck, everybody. This machine is a bit of a beast. So at the moment I'm going through 2, 3, 4 layers of wool broadcloth. You do have to keep an eye on your pleats and make sure they're all the right way round. This one particularly, just as you come off the apron. Is that the... yeah, that's the over apron. You want to make sure that that's coming the direction you want it to. And just keep an eye on all your box pleats as you go. Other things to be aware of. The box pleats will want to catch on the edge of your little fold-out support if you've got one of those on your machine. And this will stretch if you give it a chance. So do be aware of that too. You don't want it stretching. We are nearly at the end of the very difficult part now. I'll soon be onto a more normal thickness of fabric. There we are, we're through all the pleats. Waistband sewn on. I'm happy with that. There is a lot of thickness of fabric here, so I think when it comes to doing the inside, I'm probably going to do that by hand. How many thicknesses are we looking at? If I were to put this through the machine, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 layers of wool. I think that's pushing it a bit. I think that might be a needle breaker, but we'll see. I'll press it and I'll make my mind up on that. The machine might do it. Don't underestimate these old machines. If you get the right one, and the 201K is a fantastic all-rounder, it's a lot cheaper than buying a modern industrial machine, and most home sewers do not need a modern industrial machine. Something like this will do everything that you need. Well, I had a bit of a brainwave because I realised I don't need to sew through 6 layers of fabric. This fabric doesn't fray. You don't need to hem it. That was one of the reasons that I picked it for this project. So I did machine sew the waistband, and that has made things a lot easier for me. It also means that putting the belt loops on is probably going to be possible, because otherwise that would have been another 4 layers of fabric on top of the 6 I would have been going through. So yeah, we managed to fix that problem, which is great. I've also got the contraption out, and I've put it to its largest setting. So this little dial at the back here is your length, and I did a sample on some scrap of the same fabric with the same thickness, and the largest setting exactly the same as the buttons that I have. So I'm happy about that. And on the waistband, this is how I've finished the inside. So the bulk of the pleats there is actually inside the waistband, and this is just sewn down on top with a top stitch. And I'm leaving it like that because I don't need to do anything else with it. On the outside, it just gives me this. It also means that the bulk is squashed down because the stitching squashes it better than the iron does, and we'll keep it that way. So we're going to do buttonholes next. I had a play about with where these buttons should go, and I'm just going to do them. A little bit tricky to show you, but you see how the stitching line ends here? That's where my last button goes on here. So these will be functional buttons, and then I can, do them up or undo them as I see fit for comfort. And we'll have another one at the top here, and then one here at the end of the apron. Then to adjust the waist, if I find this gets a little bit tight or a little bit loose, you'll have buttons sewn on this side of the waistband. So this is the under apron, the bit you put on first. So we'll have a button about here and a button around about here. It won't be at the end, it'll be about here. So I will have some room to actually move these buttons around if I need to adjust it in the future. Hopefully I won't. And the belt loop should be enough to allow me to cinch the waist in if I need to, but we'll see. But this is the finishing bit now. The buttonholer, it has absolutely no problem with this wool, which is brilliant. I was a little bit nervous about that. So let's crack on and do these last little details, and it's very nearly reveal time. Yeah, I'm quite happy with how this is coming together. It's actually gone a lot quicker than I was expecting it to, which is nice. It's just all in the prep with these things. Absolutely all in the prep. One buttonhole down, just 1, 2, 3, 5 to go. Yeah, the machine actually doesn't mind this fabric one bit, so I'm happy. I think that plate's just shifted. Yes, we don't want that. You do have to be careful of one thing with this, which is the plate underneath needs to line up with the hole for the needle, otherwise you will smash needles. I haven't done it yet, but there is obviously still time. So about there. I love this machine. It is fantastic. And I found if you put the thread cutter right to the top of the shaft, you don't have to remove it to take the buttonholer off, but there we go. I'm not sure how well that's going to show up on camera because we're black thread on black, but yeah, I'm happy with that. It's saved me so much time. And yeah, I'll just work through and do the rest of these. I think we'll just go straight to reveal from here because I don't think you want to watch me do all these buttonholes and sew them on by hand. Don't forget, description box down below. There's all different ways to support me and, you know, Patreon and all that kind of business. If you want to see the car stuff, that's on my other channel. I'm still doing that. And of course on Patreon you get to see everything. I'm going to crack on with the last bit of this. Thank you for sticking around this far, and I will see you in a little bit when we show you the finished article. No, stop. We've made a mistake. You know when you've done a project and your gut's telling you something's not quite right and you don't know what it is. You might come back to it a few days later and learn what it is. So here's a little warning note if you're going to make one of these kilts for a mistake you can make, which I didn't even know I was capable of making, which is I sewed the kilt on upside down. Now it doesn't make any difference to the way I've put this together or the way it fits me. What I've effectively done, well, let me show you. Yeah, This moves a bit better now, because you see the pins here, that's where I'm supposed to have sewn down to, and I had sewn down to here, which meant that the top of it was like, instead of me being able to move like this, I could only move like this. All I need to do, I've unpicked the stitch line up to the point I need it to be, and then I just have to do a back and forth at the end of the stitch to lock it in at the top here, and then we can actually go back into the reveal properly. But this is a quick sneak peek of what it's going to look like, and I tell you what, it feels a load more comfortable now that I've fixed that. Yeah, so don't worry, we all make mistakes, it happens, but with sewing you can very often fix it. Proper reveal this time. Yeah, this is something I find I do automatically in this. I stroke the fabric down at the bottom, so I sit on it, and then I put my hand at the front to hold the front of the skirt down, just in case there's a breeze. Don't want to frighten the horses. You don't really need to, it's just an automatic thing. I'm maybe a little bit self-conscious, who knows. But I will say that splitting those seams up to where they should be makes the fit a lot better. You've got a lot more comfort when you're sat down because it's not trying to do this to your legs. You can actually sit comfortably, which is nice. When I mentioned that I put the kilt on upside down. What I mean is the big block for the kilt, I've done all the pleats properly, that's perfectly fine. Everything is the shapes and stuff it should be, so it does fit, but I'd effectively ended up with the line for the seat where your stitching's supposed to stop. It was at the wrong part. So the bottom of the kilt is the section that I should have sewn. It's kind of tricky to explain in that I hadn't made a mistake and I'd also made a mistake. So just unpicking the seams is enough to fix it. Anyway, I'm not going to tell you what I keep under my kilt. That's my own business. You'll just have to use your imagination. And I will hopefully see you in the next video where I think I know what I'm making, but I'm not sure. If you're on my Patreon, you will find out a little bit early. If not, just stick around, subscribe here, and you'll see the video when it pops up, hopefully. Yeah, make a kilt. They're fun. They're very comfortable.